He always swallowed his pride until tonight. It started as a normal family dinner, laughter, clinking glasses, warm conversations. But then she made him the joke again, just like always. The room filled with uneasy chuckles, stolen glances, and his silent humiliation. Only this time, something was different. His stare wasn't empty, it was steady, unshaken. Something had shifted. From this moment on, the game changed. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If it's your first time here, don't forget to subscribe and like this video, as every like truly inspires me. Please tell me which city and country you watched this video from. Now, let's get started. Thanksgiving was supposed to be an evening of gratitude, a time to sit among family, share a meal, and reflect on the blessings in our lives. As I took my place at the dinner table, surrounded by familiar faces, I had no reason to expect anything different. The night had unfolded pleasantly so far, filled with warm conversation, laughter, and the comforting clatter of silverware against plates. I was mid-conversation with my brother-in-law, when my wife's voice sliced through the hum of chatter, playful yet pointed. "Oh, please," she teased with a knowing smirk. "You should count yourself lucky. At least you have something interesting going on." I wish I could say the same about our bedroom. For a moment, the room froze. Then came the scattered, uneasy laughter, some genuine, others forced. A few guests shifted in their seats, suddenly preoccupied with their drinks, while others exchanged amused glances. The weight of her words settled over me, deliberate and sharp. She had turned me into the evening's entertainment, using my humiliation as the punchline to her joke. My face burned, but I willed myself to remain composed. I scanned the room, taking in the mix of amusement and discomfort. Some people avoided my gaze altogether, while others awaited my reaction with veiled anticipation. I could have responded right then, but to what end? A confrontation in front of everyone would only make things worse. Instead, I lifted my glass, took a slow sip, and acted as though the remark had barely registered. Yet deep inside, something shifted. This wasn't a careless slip of the tongue. It wasn't an innocent joke. It was intentional. And worse, it wasn't the first time. I thought back to all the moments before this one, similar digs, not as blatant, but just enough to erode my dignity bit by bit. She never did it in private, always in front of an audience, whether it was family, friends, or even co-workers. It was a routine of hers, a way to diminish me while others looked on. And every time, I had let it pass. But tonight felt different. The evening carried on, but I no longer felt present. I laughed when it was expected, responded when necessary, but my mind was elsewhere. I observed her as she moved through the night with ease, acting as though nothing had happened, as though my embarrassment was just a fleeting joke she had already forgotten. When dinner ended and guests began gathering their things, I mechanically went through the motions, stacking plates, collecting empty glasses. She remained carefree, still engaged in conversation, unbothered by the moment that had unraveled earlier. It meant nothing to her. To me, it meant everything. As the last guest stepped out and the door shut behind them, the house fell into silence. The warmth of the gathering faded, leaving behind only the remnants of the evening, half-filled glasses, discarded napkins, the faint echoes of conversation still lingering in the air. Standing at the sink, I let the water run over my hands, my mind replaying the dinner table scene on a loop. I waited for her to acknowledge it, an apology, a simple recognition, but she said nothing. She entered the kitchen, humming lightly as she gathered dishes, utterly unfazed. I turned off the faucet, dried my hands, and finally broke the silence. "Did you really have to say that?" My voice was steady, measured. She barely spared me a glance. "Oh, come on. Don't be so dramatic. It was just a joke. Just a joke." I exhaled slowly, nodding. "Right. A joke. So, making me look like a fool in front of everyone, that's funny to you?" She rolled her eyes, setting the glasses in the sink. No one cared. You're acting like I said something terrible." People laughed. It wasn't that big of a deal. I clenched my jaw, studying her indifference. No one cared? Maybe not. But I did. I could have argued, could have reminded her that this wasn't the first time, but I stopped myself. What was the point? She wasn't listening. She never listened. Instead, she poured herself a glass of wine, took a sip, and shrugged. "You always make a big deal out of nothing." There it was again. Her ability to twist the narrative, to make it seem like I was the one overreacting. For years, I had let it slide. The subtle insults, the dismissiveness, the way she brushed me off whenever I tried to express myself. But something about tonight was different. I didn't argue. I didn't try to make her understand. I simply watched her for a moment, then turned and walked out of the kitchen. Upstairs, I loosened my tie and sat on the edge of the bed. The house was still, but my thoughts weren't. Her words echoed in my mind, along with the realization of how effortlessly she had made me into a joke, so confident that I wouldn't push back. And for a long time, she had been right. I looked at my reflection in the mirror. The man staring back at me looked exhausted, but there was something else in his eyes, a shift, a clarity, a quiet resolve. I wasn't going to let this go, not this time. The next morning, I woke earlier than usual. I made no effort to rouse her, nor did I glance in her direction as I dressed and quietly stepped out of the bedroom. There was no point in rehashing last night's argument. She had already made it crystal clear how little it meant to her. Skipping my usual routine of brewing coffee and scrolling through emails, I grabbed my keys and walked straight out the door. I didn't linger in the kitchen, didn't pause to check my phone. Instead, I drove directly to the gym, a place I hadn't set foot in for months, maybe even longer. Life had a way of pulling me away, drowning me in work, responsibilities, and a marriage where I felt more like an afterthought than a partner. But as I stood outside that building, a sudden realization struck me. I hadn't just neglected my body. I had let go of myself entirely. Determined to change that, I signed up for a membership and got to work. The first few sessions were brutal. My muscles screamed in protest, my breath faltered faster than I remembered, and every workout left me utterly exhausted. But I kept going. This wasn't just about getting in shape, it was about reclaiming control. Every drop of sweat, every burning repetition, it was proof that I was taking something back. Beyond the gym, I started making other changes, small ones at first. I swapped my worn-out jeans and loose-fitting t-shirts for clothes that actually fit. Instead of the usual quick trim, I visited a proper barber. I straightened my posture, became more aware of how I moved, how I carried myself. I didn't announce any of it. I wasn't doing it for her, but I noticed when she started to take notice. At first it was subtle, a longer glance when I walked through the door, a lingering gaze as I moved past her. She didn't say much, but there was a shift, something unspoken hanging between us. I didn't stop. I pushed harder at work, took on projects I once shied away from, not to impress anyone, but to remind myself of what I was capable of. I reconnected with old friends, made plans without waiting for her input, without checking if it fit into her schedule. For years, I had structured my life to accommodate hers. Not anymore. Now, I was living for me. One evening, after a workout, I walked into the kitchen to grab some water. She was at the table, phone in hand, but the moment she saw me, she set it down and tilted her head. "You've been going to the gym a lot lately." Her voice was casual, but something else lurked beneath it. I twisted off the cap of my water bottle and took a slow sip. "Yeah." She waited, expecting me to elaborate. When I didn't, she let out a forced laugh. "What brought that on?" Leaning against the counter, I shrugged. Felt like it was time for a change. For the first time in a long time, I saw something new in her expression. Uncertainty. I let the silence stretch between us before taking another sip and walking past her, leaving her sitting there, wondering what was coming next. In the weeks that followed, I stayed the course. I didn't slow down. I didn't offer explanations. I wasn't looking for her validation, and that, more than anything, unsettled her. She became more observant, her eyes following me when I walked through the door, stealing glances at my phone whenever it buzzed. She tossed out casual remarks about how I seemed different. But this wasn't an act. I was different. I wasn't waiting for her approval anymore. At first, she pretended it didn't faze her, but I could tell it did. One evening, as I was getting dressed to go out, something I rarely did without checking with her first, she leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. "Where are you going?" Her voice was neutral, but the tension in her posture gave her away. I fastened the last button on my shirt without looking up. "Out." "With who?" I reached for my watch and secured it around my wrist. "Some friends from work." She let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "You never used to go out like this." I met her gaze in the mirror and nodded. "Yeah, I guess I didn't." Her lips pressed into a tight line. She wasn't used to this, to me being unpredictable, unavailable. She had always been the one in control, the one setting the terms. Now, the balance had shifted. A few nights later, as I sat on the couch responding to messages, she settled beside me. "You've been really busy lately." Her voice was softer than usual. I nodded. "Yeah." She hesitated, then spoke again. "You know, if something's wrong, you can talk to me." I almost laughed. Now, she wanted to talk. After years of dismissing my concerns, brushing off every attempt I made to tell her how I felt, suddenly, she cared. Not because she had changed, but because she could sense it, something slipping through her fingers. I didn't fall for it. I didn't reassure her. I didn't pretend everything was fine. I simply met her eyes for a moment, then turned back to my phone. That silence spoke louder than any words could. After that, she started trying harder. Small gestures at first, cooking more often, bringing up memories from when we were happy, suggesting outings to places we hadn't visited in years. She acted as if we could slip back into the old routine, as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed, because this time, I wasn't the one waiting. I had stopped playing the game. One evening, as we sat on the couch, she reached for my hand, something that hadn't happened in what felt like forever. I didn't pull away, but I didn't grip hers in return either. For the first time in ages, I wasn't the one chasing. After that night, her change in demeanor became glaringly obvious. She started making an effort, not out of love or genuine care, but out of fear. Fear of losing control, fear of no longer holding all the power. Suddenly, she was handing out compliments, something she hadn't bothered with in a long time. "You look good today," she said one morning, studying me like I was someone unfamiliar, someone she was trying to figure out. I acknowledged it with a nod. "Thanks." No excitement, no eagerness, just a neutral response. Her messages became more frequent. She wanted to know my plans, asked when I'd be home. Before, she hardly noticed when I worked late. Now, she was suddenly invested in my whereabouts. One evening, as I was tying my sneakers for the gym, she leaned against the doorway, watching me. "You've really stuck with this whole workout thing," she noted. I shrugged. "Yeah." She hesitated before asking, "Are you doing it for someone?" I paused, meeting her eyes. There was something different in her tone. Uncertainty, maybe even insecurity. It was written all over her face. She was trying to decipher whether I had moved on, if there was someone else. I let the silence linger before finally standing, grabbing my keys and saying, "I'm doing this for me." And that was the truth. She didn't like that answer. What she wanted was reassurance, something to anchor her, to restore her sense of control. But I wasn't offering that. After that, her efforts escalated. One evening, she cooked my favorite meal, something she hadn't done in years. The table was set, candles flickered, and she even poured my drink before I sat down. I took a bite. It tasted just as good as it always had, but I wasn't going to pretend that any of this changed anything. "This is nice," I said, my voice unreadable. Relief washed over her face. "I thought it would be. I know things have been off, but maybe we just need to spend more time together." I let her talk, let her explain how things could be fixed. But as her words continued, it became clear. This wasn't an apology. There was no acknowledgement of the part she had played in all of this. She wasn't trying to mend what had been broken. She just wanted to rewind, to return to how things used to be. And I had no interest in that. That night, she reached for my hand again. I allowed it, but I didn't hold on. Because I understood something she hadn't grasped yet. I wasn't the same man she had worn down over the years, and I had no intention of becoming him again. The shift between us was undeniable now. She felt it, just as I did. The difference was, I had come to terms with it. She was still resisting. She started planning spontaneous outings, dinner reservations, weekend trips, things that had never been priorities for her before. She was desperate to bring back a version of us where she had control. But that version of me no longer existed. One evening, she came home early to find me sitting in the living room, a book in my hands. She sat across from me, fidgeting slightly. "I was thinking," she began, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, "maybe we should go on a trip. Just the two of us. Get away for a bit." I closed the book and met her gaze. "Why now?" She forced a small smile and shrugged. "I just think we need it." Need it. I knew what she meant. She needed it. She needed to believe she could still pull me back in, that gestures like this could patch over the cracks. But I wasn't interested in pretending. "I don't think that's a good idea," I said. Her smile wavered. "Why not?" I exhaled slowly, setting the book aside. "Because I'm done." The words hung heavy between us, immovable. She blinked as if trying to process them. "Done with what?" she asked, her voice quieter now. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. Done with this. Done pretending that the past didn't matter. Done overlooking the way she had treated me for years. Done being someone she could disregard until it suited her to pull me back in. Her expression hardened. "So that's it? You're just walking away from us?" A quiet chuckle escaped me as I shook my head. "You walked away a long time ago. The only difference is, now I finally see it." She opened her mouth, as if ready to argue, but then shut it. Maybe she knew I was right. Maybe she was too tired to fight anymore. She sat there in silence for a long moment, before swallowing hard and nodding. "So what now?" I exhaled deeply as I pushed myself upright. It was time to move forward, and so I did. The next few weeks blurred together in a haze of practicalities, sorting through the remnants of a life I was leaving behind, making arrangements, and reshaping my future without her in it. But the reality? I had been letting go long before our final conversation ever took place. The moment she humiliated me in front of everyone at Thanksgiving, something inside me cracked. From that day onward, every choice I made, every step I took, was a deliberate move toward something better. A life where I was no longer defined by her opinions. A life where, for the first time in years, I put myself first. So, if you're wondering what exactly happened on that infamous Thanksgiving, let me tell you, the divorce was an absolute storm. Lawyers, disputes, the exhausting process of dividing a life we had once shared. It unraveled exactly as you'd expect from a marriage that had already been disintegrating long before we had the courage to say it out loud. She didn't take it well. Initially, she wore a mask of indifference, pretending none of it mattered. But that illusion didn't last. The anger came next, the accusations, the sudden, desperate attempt to salvage what she had spent years dismantling. But by then, it was too late. The damage was beyond repair. Walking away was painful, but staying would have destroyed me. Now, I live on my own terms. No more censoring my words, No more carefully navigating someone else's emotional minefield. No more being the object of her contempt. I rebuilt myself, not for revenge, not to prove anything, but because I deserve a life beyond the one I left behind. So if you're sitting there, wondering if reclaiming your dignity is worth the struggle, let me tell you without a doubt, it absolutely is. This story has come to an end. Sometimes we get used to enduring, turning a blind eye, and justifying those who diminish us. But respect is not something you can beg for. It is either given or not. And if you are not respected, it's time to ask yourself, why are you tolerating this? This story is not about revenge, but about awakening. About how important it is to reclaim control, your worth, and your life. Your comfort, your confidence, your strength. They are in your hands. Don't let anyone take them away from you. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you liked this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you. Sometimes, everything falls apart not with a crash, but in absolute silence, amid glowing kitchen displays, icy compresses, and familiar routines. He wasn't expecting betrayal. It didn't look like the movies. No hallway kisses, no secret messages. It came in the form of a dress that screamed too loudly, and a look that no longer held a we. Just a regular office party, a bit of wine, strangers whispering, and suddenly, the world begins to crack. One wrong laugh, one unfamiliar voice behind a closed door, one moment where everything that once felt solid shatters into pieces. And then comes the choice. Swallow it, forgive, or smash to bloody pieces everything that suffocates you. He chose the latter. No tears, no pretty words, just the cold, the weight of a bottle in his hand, and the sharp clarity. There's no way back. No one expected how that night would unfold, but no one will forget how it ended. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If it's your first time here, don't forget to subscribe and like this video, as every like truly inspires me. Please tell me which city and country you watched this video from. Now, let's get started. There are times when just staying afloat feels like all you can manage. Life doesn't stop piling on, and somewhere along the way, you slip into autopilot. You take one deep breath and dive back into the chaos, only to realize later you forgot to breathe again. People say that's just life now, but if that's really the case, what are we even doing? Sure, having it all sounds appealing, but if the price is your own existence, is it still worth chasing? The microwave, with its relentless flashing, 11 over and over, was enough to unravel me. My head was throbbing, which didn't help. You'd think that more than 20 years in Florida would have dulled my frustration with the constant blackouts. It hadn't. For ages, I'd been meaning to buy one of those whole house backup systems, but it never seemed urgent. And now, still didn't. That evening, I stepped into the kitchen and left the ceiling light off intentionally. The glow from the LED displays on the appliances cast enough of a halo to read a book. The room sat in a muted hush, and I liked it that way. Dim, silent, just me. I shifted on one of the bar stools, my lower back protesting, and silently blamed Caroline for talking me into them. They were slightly too tall, maybe by 10 centimeters, and the seats were rigid when they should have been plush. Worse still, they were almost 40% pricier than the ones I'd picked. But I let her win that one, thinking they'd only see occasional use, maybe breakfast on a slow weekend morning. I never expected to be anchored to one for over 2 hours. Yet there I sat. And the night? It was brutal. Actually, it wasn't even night anymore. The clock blinked 2:15 a.m. Between age and distance running, ice packs had become as routine for me as socks. After knocking out 20 to 25 kilometers, I'd dig into the freezer, strap the ice to my tendons, wedge more under the arches of my feet, and wait. I hated the chill, but I hated pain more. I'd never even heard of plantar fasciitis until it hit me. Then it stayed. For months. That's when I learned how cruel the wrong shoes and poor recovery could be. 10 minutes of running, 10 minutes of icing. The first few minutes of each run were torture, but once the pain dulled, I could manage. Ice became a ritual, a way to undo the day's damage. In winter, I'd sometimes trade the ice packs for the pool, unheated, waist deep, shoes off. It offered the same numb relief, only colder. Florida winters can still bite, but the sting never climbed higher than my knees. Tonight, though, the cold wasn't on my legs. It was wrapped around my face and hands. I've always loved the stretch from Thanksgiving to New Year's. I'd hoard vacation days just to soak it in. The lights, the calm, even the annoying stuff like the yearly office holiday party. Barely tolerable, but tolerable. As a manager, I was expected to show up, eat, mingle, act like I was having fun, and then quietly disappear. They'd open the bar for an hour and a half, and most people treated it like a sprint to blackout. I'd park myself at the edge, nursing a beer and doing damage control. It wasn't easy. Over the years, I'd had to call the cops more than once. Drunk drivers, fights, you name it. Some parties felt more like war zones than celebrations. Caroline had always tagged along, playing the part of the dutiful wife, until last December. She said she had a headache, though we both knew better. I didn't push, especially after she told me I didn't need to attend her party either. I remember thinking, finally, a break. I was wrong. This year, I asked her if she planned to come with me again. She started dodging days before I even asked. By the time I brought it up, her answer was already written on her face. "Go without me," she said. "And if you're not home too late, maybe we'll have a little celebration of our own." With that kind of offer on the table, I had no intention of staying out late. But somehow, I lingered longer than planned. Still, I got home around 10:30, and she kept her word. We had our own private gathering. I waited for her to bring up her party, but she barely mentioned it. Not that I was itching for the details. I'd already decided I wouldn't be attending. I even had a plan to use her own line on her. That was, until I saw the dress. She had bought it just for her event. Now, I know holiday outfits tend to be bold, sparkly, short, loud, but this one went way beyond that. It wasn't just festive, it was brazen. I stared and asked, "You're not seriously wearing that out Saturday night, are you?" She lifted an eyebrow. "What's wrong with it? I think I look fantastic." "Babe," I said, treading carefully, "that dress says a lot, and what it says is, I'm available right now. Don't you have something subtler?" Her face changed. "So, you think I can't pull this off? That it's too sexy, too young for someone like me?" I paused, weighing my words like landmines. "In that dress, Caroline, you'd look like a low-rent drifter." Her eyes narrowed. "A drifter?" "I'm not saying you don't look good," I said, "but a dress like that, without me beside you, it's just a lot." She didn't take it well. I knew she wouldn't. And just like that, despite it being mid-December, the temperature between us dropped fast. Still, I wasn't about to let it wreck the season for me. The following Saturday crept in, bringing with it Caroline's much-anticipated work function. I watched quietly as she readied herself, each brushstroke and last-minute tweak etched into my memory. When she finally stepped out, a vision in heels and red lipstick, she caught me watching, and spotted my freshly pressed suit. She paused, eyebrow raised. "And you're going where exactly?" "Heading to the event," I said. "With you." "I thought you weren't coming this year," she replied, folding her arms across her chest. "And let you walk in there looking like that solo? Not happening." Her gaze hardened. "So you don't trust me in this outfit?" "I don't have any trust left to give," I replied, voice flat. Her eyes turned icy. "Fine, but don't expect me to hold your hand the whole night." She spun back toward the mirror to finish up. When she finally stepped away, she looked even more flawless, enough to make me suggest, half joking but mostly serious, that we skip the whole thing. How about we ditch the party, I said. Grab dinner somewhere quiet and head home after. I've got better ways to spend the night with you. She didn't laugh, didn't suggest an alternative. We pulled up to the Hilton, the usual spot for these kinds of corporate spectacles. Inside, clusters of employees circled around cocktail tables, while outsiders like me hovered around the edges, largely unnoticed. Caroline was swallowed by a crowd of her colleagues almost instantly, probably the same ones she always mentioned, and I spent the next hour making small talk with whoever looked equally out of place. Most of the guys I met had already hit the open bar pretty hard and were deep into slurred jokes and half-forgotten stories. I spoke with a few partners and spouses too. Several knew Caroline, and nearly all had some opinion about her manager, Declan. Apparently, his reputation preceded him. Some labeled him barely tolerable, others said he was human waste with a corner office. Smug, manipulative, predatory, the exact adjectives varied, but the general mood was unanimous. And these weren't just drunk rants. This was the sober crowd speaking plainly. The food didn't exactly redeem the evening. For all the money they seemed to be throwing around, I expected something better. Instead, they served up bland steak, suspiciously marinated chicken, and charred fish that tasted like it had been nuked in a fast food microwave. Honestly, I've had tastier shrimp baskets at gas stations. It was obvious the real budget had gone to the alcohol, which flowed freely until midnight, or until someone passed out, whichever came first. I nursed a couple cocktails early on, then wandered with a half glass of red wine in hand, mostly for show. Somewhere along the way, a tall man in an overpriced suit cornered me. "Having a good time?" he asked, flashing the kind of corporate smile that had been rehearsed in a mirror. "Doing my best," I replied. "You're Caroline's husband, right?" "She's doing great. Declan's taken her under his wing. There's talk of a promotion. Team lead, maybe. You must be proud." He grinned and moved on before I could respond. I managed a polite, "Thanks," but the compliment sat wrong. Where was she? I scanned the room. No sign of Caroline. I drained the rest of my wine and went searching. The event spanned the main ballroom and two side suites. I checked the hallway, glanced through doors. Still nothing. Eventually, I stepped into one of the hotel suites, packed shoulder to shoulder with buzzed employees. Judging by the glassy eyes and the laughter pitched just a little too loud, not many would be driving home sober. I was turning to leave when I stopped near the bathroom and leaned casually against the wall. That's when I caught her voice. "Cut it out. Not tonight. Samuel's here," she said, her tone tight with urgency. "I can't believe you dragged that idiot with you." A man, unmistakably Declan, responded. "I reserved a room for us. You told me he wasn't coming." "I didn't expect it," she snapped. "He saw the dress you bought and insisted." "What? He's your watchdog now?" Declan chuckled. "Please. If he ever protected you, that ended ages ago." He laughed again, a low, smug sound. And just like that, everything fell into place. Caroline was trading loyalty for leverage. Her climb up the ladder came with certain compromises, ones she'd rather not talk about. Then I heard more, something barely audible, something about getting me out of the picture. Thank God I was sober. I needed a clear head. There was an empty champagne bottle chilling nearby, tucked in a silver bucket. Didn't matter that it was drained. It had weight. Declan was younger, taller, stronger. Physically, the odds were against me. If I wanted a shot, I'd need to make it count. Caroline stepped out first, smoothing the straps of her dress like nothing had happened. She didn't even see me standing there. Then Declan followed. I moved to intercept him. "Declan," I said, "you know what you really are?" He glanced sideways, then smirked. Bad move. I shifted the bottle behind my back, fingers gripping the neck. If he'd reacted with anything but that smile, maybe things would have ended differently. But that grin? It said everything. "I've got your wife." "What now?" I said his name again, loud enough for Caroline to hear. She turned. Time slowed. Movies lie. Bottles don't shatter cleanly. Even empty, a champagne bottle hits hard. But it didn't break, and Declan didn't drop. He was stunned, though. I'm no fighter. Last time I threw a punch, I was 12 and lost badly. But this was different. He needed pain. I needed to give it to him. What followed was messy, loud, brutal. I landed enough punches to split my knuckles, and one desperate headbutt crunched his nose. By the time security or a few burly co-workers pulled us apart, Declan was a bleeding mess, and I was shaking with adrenaline. But I felt something else too. Relief. Maybe even satisfaction. It was hard to say who looked more wrecked when it ended, him or me. But if I had to choose, I'd say I took his crown, stomped on it, and kicked it straight to hell. Declan was coughing up blood and cursing like he'd lost his mind, while I just leaned back, smirking like I'd already won. That smug little grin of mine pushed him over the edge. The yelling escalated fast, threats fired like bullets, until someone finally got smart enough to tell me to leave. Caroline was sobbing in a corner, her mascara streaking down her cheeks like a ruined painting. "Don't come back," I told her, deadpan. "I don't care where you land. Just don't set foot in that house again." A pair of hotel security guards flanked me and walked me out into the cold night. My right eye was foggy with swelling, but I slid into the car anyway and limped my way home behind the wheel. I pulled into the garage, cut across the kitchen, and went straight to the fridge. 4 ice packs and a cold beer later, I finally sat down. I parked myself on the kitchen stool for what felt like an eternity, rotating ice packs on my knuckles, sipping that Corona, and bracing for the sound of a squad car rolling up. But nothing happened. No sirens, no knock. I figured they'd come tomorrow, maybe by Monday at the latest. I glanced down at my hands, swollen, aching, raw, and it hit me that this holiday was about to be a far cry from the ones before. Christmas was only days away, and true to form, I hadn't picked up a single present. Good thing I had the week off, and shopping for one is easy when you're shopping for yourself. I reached into my coat pocket, half hoping I still had the reason I swung at Declan in the first place. He tried pressing charges for assault, but once my attorney caught wind of the full story, a few strategic calls were made. Like magic, the charges disappeared. Turns out someone high up the corporate ladder didn't want this mess tied to their name. My lawyer made it clear, if they pushed it, the headlines would come, and no string of fairy lights could hide the truth. A scorned husband catching his wife mid-affair at her company's Christmas bash? That was headline gold. Sure, Declan was a tool, but he was their tool. Afterward, Caroline kept trying to reach me. Call after call, voicemail after voicemail. I ignored everyone. The boys spoke with her, but not once did they try to excuse what she'd done. Maybe I didn't completely screw up as a father. Friends and relatives tried to sprinkle a little holiday spirit around, but everything felt fake, like echoes in a house that used to be a home. I figured the legal stuff could wait until January. No point in spoiling what little peace my family had left. Meanwhile, over at her parents' place, Caroline's mom spotted a FedEx truck pulling up. The delivery guy hustled to the door. "Delivery for Caroline Martinez," he said. Her mother signed without thinking, then handed the small, gift-wrapped box to her daughter. "It's from Samuel." The package was compact, neatly wrapped. Caroline peeled off the paper, revealing a black velvet ring box. A flicker of hope sparked in her expression, until she opened it. The box slipped from her hand, clattering to the floor. 2 bloodied teeth rolled across the tile, landing at her father's feet. He stared for a second, then calmly picked them up, tucked them into his pocket, and walked away while Caroline crumbled to pieces. The divorce papers arrived the day after Christmas, along with a letter. Caroline had been hoping, foolishly, that I might still be willing to talk, to listen, to forgive. But that moment never came. She tore the envelope open with shaking hands. Inside, a letter, typed and signed. "Dear Caroline, I hope you liked your Christmas gift. Let's be real. Declan would have never had the spine to give it to you himself. I'm glad I could help. At this point, your reasons don't matter. Maybe you had some. I just hope they were worth it. Let's make one thing clear. I didn't go after Declan that night to win you back. The second I saw what I saw, we were done. I didn't fight for you. I fought for me. Sure, I could have just walked away, filed for divorce, let Declan come out clean, but that didn't sit right with me. Someone had to hit him where it hurt. And I'll admit, he's tougher than I gave him credit for. Thought cracking that bottle across his skull would have dropped him cold. Part of me's glad it didn't. Felt good to see him flinch. They threw me out, yeah, but I made my point. And before I left, I spotted those 2 teeth on the floor. I made sure to grab them. I heard Declan lost his job. You just got knocked down a rung. Must have really wowed the top brass. Maybe one of them will take care of you now, the way Declan did. Maybe they'll give you a nickname too. The home wrecker has a certain charm, or maybe break room Barbie. Anyway, just sign the divorce papers. Let's end this circus. You keep your junk, I'll keep mine. We'll sell the house. It's too much for me now anyway. Every room reeks of what we used to be. I've told the boys the truth. You cheated. I hated doing it, but they deserved honesty. You're still their mom. That's worth some respect. No more than that. I'd love to wish you happiness, but that'd be a lie. Honestly, I hope karma finds you fast and hits you harder than I ever could. When our mutual friends start asking questions, and they will, I'll tell them everything. Fill in the blanks if you want, assuming anyone still gives a damn. Your soon-to-be ex-husband. My lawyer got the signed documents on New Year's Eve. Just like that, I rang in the new year a free man. Word was, Caroline quit her job a few weeks later and vanished. I never asked where she went. Maybe one day the boys will fill me in. Some people still whisper that I acted too quickly, tossed 25 years out over one mistake, one fight. But they didn't see what I saw. They didn't feel what I felt. Whenever the topic came up, I'd meet the guy's gaze and coolly ask if he'd be open to lending me his wife for the weekend, just for a little physical release. The usual reaction was some variation of, "Are you out of your mind?" And I'd reply, "Well, you can take her back Monday. It'll only be the one time." That's usually when the gravity of the situation began to register with them, when they'd get a small taste of what it was like standing in my shoes. I floated that same offer past maybe 6 different friends. Only one actually said yes. The condition? His wife was 74, hard of hearing, and shuffled around with a walker. David grinned when he said it. I called him a bastard, but told him I'd think about it. Of course I wouldn't. Now, any time I read about a man who's chosen the cuckold's road, I find myself looking down at the worn skin on my knuckles. And honestly, no regrets. I'd walk the same path all over again if I had to. It just sucks that so few really understand what it means, what it costs, to live like that. This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you like this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you.